morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're back again. It's Atlanta Discuss. 7 continents in the world, 7 billion people. It's not easy. Yes, I know. Everybody says I talk too much about Nigeria. I cannot stop talking about Nigeria. Nigeria is the largest concentration of Black people in the world. Nigeria is not working well. It's really, really not working well. I've said it and I'll continue to refer to the great Madiba, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, who said, if Nigeria works well, Africa will work well. A lot of countries that have been beneficiaries of Nigeria, especially in the area of judiciary, today are even faring better than Nigeria. Some, especially countries like Botswana, we used to have their chief judges and some of their legal workers as Nigeria in the past. So today we're going to talk more about the Nigerian judiciary, and we have another extraordinary guest, a legal luminary. We're going to be talking about financial allocation disputes with Rivers State as the focal point. We need someone that will interpret the Constitution for us. As we know, the case is in court, so we have to be very tactical about how we address it. But we need to address it. There's a lot of confusion in the land. We need somebody with a legal mind to, interpret the law for us. That's why today we have Mr. Jibrin Samuel Okutepa SAN as our guest. Mr. Okutepa, welcome to Atlanta Discuss.
Thank you very much, Ade, my brother. So how are you guys, Atlanta? How are you preparing for your election?
well, I mean, we on Atlanta Discuss, we are making our endorsement tomorrow. I'm sure you'll see it. We have an idea of where it's going. We will endorse who we think is the right person, and we'll also make a prediction. So you'll hear from that tomorrow. So
thank you.
So, Mr. Okutepa, to those of you that don't know him, he's an astute legal practitioner of very great repute, fantastic pedigree, true to power. That's what we like at Atlanta Discuss, people that are always true to power. Some has described him as an iconic legal salamander, called to the inner bar. Yes, they have. He is also a senior advocate of Nigeria, like I said, the notary public. His effort has clearly contributed immensely to the development of the Nigerian jurisprudence. So clearly, he's a man for the job. So today, we're talking about Rivers State financial allocation. We've veered to other legal issues. But the first question for you, Mr. Okutepa, is what is wrong with our judiciary? Everybody seems to have overtaken us. I was just following the Botswana situation. They had an election, and a party that's been in power for so long lost, and everything is mere formality. You recall Justice Akiola that used to be chief judge of that same country. So what is happening to our judiciary? What is wrong, sir?
Well, if the foundation be destroyed, there's nothing that the righteous can do. It's an ecclesiastical saying in the Bible. I think the challenges the Nigerian judiciary is currently facing in terms of its rating, in terms of its jurisprudential soundness, in terms of every other area that you can think of, that we were almost second to none in the entire continent of Africa and in the Commonwealth region, had dwindled in such a geometrical proportion to the disadvantage of purity of justice. And the reason is simple. Nigeria is a country where politicians seem to believe, and wrongly in my estimation, that governance is all about them and not about the people. Because you know that democracy is government of the people, by the people, and for the people, which means that sovereignty belongs to the people, people decide. Then the judiciary is, in my estimation, is the strongest arm of government by every standard of definition. But unfortunately, in terms of practical application of law, in terms of practical situation of things, it seems to be the weakest arm of government now because of several factors. And these factors are, first, from the recruitment process. In those days, you don't get to the bench unless you are a man or a woman of impeccable character. Integrity was a virtue. It wasn't a vice. It was a virtue. that if you are not a man of integrity, if there is a question mark in your career as a legal practitioner, you're automatically disqualified from becoming a judicial officer. But as time goes on, because the political class appears to know the importance of judiciary and how fundamental and how powerful they are, it appears that they started one by one from bringing in those they think can play to their music. And so we began to have some persons on the bench that ought not to be there. And you know, let me be clear to you, my brother, that Nigerian judiciary is not in the bad state as it is being painted, because there are still very sound judicial officers that have been overshadowed by the attitude of few judicial officers. And once there is a bad lawyer within the legal profession, the entire world think that the legal profession in Nigeria is bad. There are still good judges, no doubt. There are there in some corners, no doubt. But they are no longer being given responsibility as they should be given responsibility. And even those that are given responsibility, when they run into troubled waters, we no longer have people who stand by them, defend them, encourage them, pour accolade on them. And so it becomes a situation of, if you can no longer beat them, then you must join them. So it will take a man or a woman of very high repute and character and with a serious comportment that can run away from every evil to stand out in the Nigerian situation. You may have read what I wrote, that we have a very unhygienic environment of practice now, that if you go to court as a good lawyer, sometimes abnormalities becomes normal. And so this is the challenge we find, and it's a societal problem, because Nigerian judges are Nigerians operating in Nigerian, under Nigerian land, on the Nigerian soil, drinking Nigerian water, and breathing Nigerian air, and moving in Nigerian soil. And so they see what goes on in the society, and those who cannot but survive will have to beat them. So it's a societal thing, and I think that it will be nice for those of you who are also not within the environment here to look at it, that there is a total requirement of change of character of the way we do things in Nigeria. It is, I do not see anything wrong with our laws. Both the Nigerian Constitution, both the penal law, both the penal, all the laws. There is nothing. Indeed, if you give good laws to bad men to operate, and in the words of the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation, they will operate it badly. So it is better to have good men operating bad law than bad men operating good law. And that is the situation we find ourselves here. For instance, I've asked on a series of occasions, where do we have the requirement, for instance, that if you want to get somebody on bail, the person must be a public officer with a certain grade level, and then must have landed property in a choice place in Abuja? Are we therefore not indirectly commercializing and creating rooms for the pollution of the stream of justice? So it is when we decide to agree as Nigerians that things must be done right, things must be done as it is done in a civilized world, then we follow the rule of law and not rule of convenience. That's when our judiciary will come back to what it used to be. And I think that the Honorable the Chief Justice of Nigeria currently, that has just been declared and appointed and sworn in, has very difficult but not insurmountable task in front of her. All she needs to do is to get men and women of goodwill and strong character to tame this very dangerous situation we find ourselves in. So, in summary, therefore, it is the recruitment process that we have embarked upon soon after the finest of judicial officers had either died or retired that is creating this situation for us. So we must tinker with the recruitment process. We must have the best of the best. A situation where the worst 11 is leading the best 11 on the field of play, you are not likely to have a trophy brought back home for you in such competition. And that is what we are seeing here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, but how do we do this recalibration you're talking about? The new Chief Justice, like you rightly said, I know there's people that don't share your optimism. I mean, there's some already believe that she's a beneficiary of the system. Some even say she was part of the Opuzodima. She was among the judges in the Opuzodima case, and the rest is history. Now, in my research, I realized that Kenya reorganized its judiciary, at the stage, they recalibrated, reorganized, and all that. Is that type of reorganization, is it possible in Nigeria? Because you've been saying merit-based and all that. We're not a merit-based society at the moment. So how do we achieve all these things you're saying?
It requires the cooperation of the three arms of government. And it requires the nationalistic instincts of those who found themselves in power now. For instance, what does President Ahmed Bola Tinubu going to lose if he puts Nigeria on the right footing, notwithstanding whatever perception any of us may have had of him? Because beyond being president of Nigeria, there is no any other thing he can be in Nigeria. And so, if I have the privilege and opportunity that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu has as president of Nigeria, the first thing I want to think is to think about good governance that is rooted in the rule of law and due process, not the continuation of the status quo of oppressing and operating a system that are completely anti-people. For instance, on the 2nd of November 2019, I had a cause to warn. And this is what I said when I wrote, that unless we change our approach to our electoral jurisprudence and do substantial justice in courts and punish those who rig their ways to public offices in Nigeria, democracy will become the survivor of the fittest. And the will of the people will no longer matter in election. That was my warning on the 2nd of November 2019. We are in 2024, and you are all living witnesses to what we have been seeing in our election. Who are conducting our elections in Nigeria? Are we really practicing democracy? Now, may he so rest in peace. President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua came to power. The first thing that man did was to acknowledge that the process that brought him to power was faulty. He set up Honorable Justice Mohammed Lawal Wade electoral panel. Now, where is that report? It's gathering dust in the archive of Nigerian dustbin of history. Now, who has the responsibility to do so? It is those who are in power. Now, once upon a time was Honorable Justice Kayode Esho panel to look at the situation in the judiciary. Many were recommended for disciplinary processes. Many were recommended. Who implemented it? Nobody. So in a situation where righteousness no longer matters, but it is the capacity and your ability to do evil that endear you to those in power, then you cannot get any good thing in that society. So when you look at the way things are done now, my dear, you need to be here and see practical reality of the open desecration of so many things that ought not to happen in a civilized world. And let me tell you that Nigerians are good followers of good and bad. If you cast your mind back to when Major General Muhammadu Buhari and General Tunde Ijagbon were heads of state and vice president in Nigeria in 1985, 1983 to 1985. The Q culture that we have been unable to maintain started from there. Because I recall in those days I was in Enugu when somebody was dropped out of a vehicle and went somewhere to wee on the road. The moment he finished, there was a receipt. Nobody was taking law into his hand, and everybody was ready to obey the principle of queuing, orderliness. And if you recall, when Muhammad Buhari became Nigerian president, everybody was prepared to run away because they were expecting the General Muhammad Buhari of 1983 to 1985. But Nigerians are like children. The moment they are trying to purify their father's meal or their mother's meal, and there's no resistance to it, they go all up to pick the entire food from the plate. So they look at the general, were waiting to see the vibrancy in him, and nothing came out of it. Then we then began to see another level of corruption in a dimension never witnessed by anybody. And I tell you that some of the level of things that were done, they used a legal means to achieve an illegal means. How do I mean? I will arrange with you, I'm a minister in government, and I will simply award a contract to you, you did not execute. Then I encourage you to sue me. Then you will sue me in court, and then I will concede to judgment, and then amount of money will be taken away from Nigerian Treasury in the name of a judgment for a contract that was not executed.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Has anybody, and this there were some of these things that were before EFCC, reports they were there, but nothing happens. Nigerians, look, my challenge with us, including you and I, is that we don't have the capacity to give consequences to misbehavior. We are too religious and far from God, because if there are violations of the rights of people, the law were brought into being to deal with people with deviant conduct. But today, if President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, for instance, start going after some people now, the first thing is to look at the tribal background of the people he's going after, whether those people are Yoruba or Hausa, Fulani, Igbo. So we are people who just major in minors and forget about the majority that should give the succor and comfort to our people. That's the challenge we have. So back to the question, this can be done if the three leaders of Nigeria, heading the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, say, look, enough is enough. Let us use our resources for good governance, not for political flamboyancy and political jamborees. Let us use Nigerian resources to do what is right. This contract being awarded, these judges, let us look at it. Who are the judges and who are the lawyers? Because it takes two to tango. When we talk about judiciary, we must also talk about legal practitioners, because no judge files a case in court. The judge waits for a case to be brought. We must look at both sides of the coins. The legal profession, I have written, is that it's the greatest enemy of itself, because if you look at our laws very well, the judicial arm of government is a department that is exclusively dominated. Almost 90% of the personnel in the judiciary are dominated by members of the legal profession. And we are the only profession with a defined code of conduct. And mark you, the very moment we began to bring legality into what is an otherwise ethical issue, that's where we miss it. Because in those days, once there is an allegation of impropriety against a judicial officer or a legal practitioner, nobody was talking about what we call the right to fair hearing, fundamental right. Once there is an appearance of impropriety, it is appearance, not the presence of it. Once it appears that indeed Ade will be compromised if he presides over a matter involving Mr. Okutepa, Ade becomes disqualified. But today, we defend the right of Ade and Okutepa with such an evangelical commitment of legality that we forget about the morality that is the foundation of the legal profession. So we need to begin to look at ourselves. How many of us lawyers that are really called lawyers have respect for Rule 1 of the rules of professional conduct that says that in your determination in your job, you must promote and foster the cause of justice. And you must not do anything, including accepting to take bribe, including accepting to truncate, including accepting to bring down government. You must not do it. How many can run away from the sacks of dollars, pound sterling, euro, and naira to say, no, I will not take this matter? That is where the issue is. And I recommend that we go back to what we used to have in Africa culture. And what is this? You don't accept what is not clean. African man or woman was not a child of one father or one mother. A child in Africa, in Yoruba, in Igbo, in Igala, in Netulo, in Nigede, were children of the entire community, where people were taught righteousness, how to do things right. What is wrong was wrong. And nobody was carrying koboko to go and meet teacher to say, why did you flog my child for doing what is wrong? But we have imbibed a culture that is anti-cultural African to begin to look at wrong things from perspectives of legalism. And that's where we miss it. So we must go back to national orientation. Let us reorientate our people. A lot of things are wrong. See, when you land in Nigeria today, the first thing people expect you to come here with is that you are coming with dollars. Nobody, and if you start spraying the dollars in the airport, you become a national hero. So what has gone wrong with our national attitude to morality and issues that we can make the other people? What makes a medical practitioner, for instance, to steal drugs meant for sick patients? What makes a judge, for instance, to look at an accused person that walked to the court from his home and give a condition that will take the person to prison, even when the prison is most unhygienic? So these are things that I expected the president, the Senate president, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, and all those concerned with the legal profession to begin to not only set boundary, but to enforce the crossing of that boundary. That's one way. And then let our conduct, those of us in the system, let's have our conduct examined. Are we normal to be in the legal profession or to be on the bench? Yes.
So a quick follow-up to what you just said. I mean, is it that as Nigerians, we are inherently dishonest people across board, or our problem is failure of leadership? You know, you did say that if the National Assembly, the presidency, as the executive arm, and everybody gets their act together, we can get back to where we should be. But these people are the major beneficiary of what is happening now. You know, how will they want to reset what benefits them? You know, so the question is, are we inherently dishonest? Because you say we go to church, we don't act like churchy or religious people in our conduct. So is it that we as the people are the problem, or is just a failure of leadership? So many people have said, if we have the right leader, I think it was Peter Obi that said, if he doesn't take contract, his wife doesn't take contract, his children doesn't take contract, 60 or 70% of the problem is solved. So are we the problem, or is just failure of leadership?
It is failure of leadership. And the people, the leaders come from the people. There is no Nigerian leader today that was not born and raised and watched previous Nigerian leaders who engaged in conduct unbecoming that were not sanctioned, that's not in power. And just give me, apart from President Ahmed Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that stayed with, what do they call this party, Action something, AD, and then before they came with the talk that metamorphosed into what they call APC now, virtually every politician of note in Nigeria today have been a member of PDP or part and parcel of government. Show me who in this current government was not a prominent member of the past government, including, with profound respect, President Ahmed Bola Ahmed Tinubu. In fact, he was described as a national leader of APC under President Muhammad Buhari, and he campaigned vigorously for President Muhammad Buhari. And so, for me, I have said consistently that he cannot be detached from the failure of that government because they were part and parcel of the same family. So the question is not whether or not Nigerian, like I said in the beginning, are like children who look onto what their fathers or mothers do. If they see their mother as wayward, possibility exists for waywardness in the children that comes. If they see the father as very tough and somebody who does not tolerate evil, they are likely to run away from evil. When you see those children that were bundled to the court yesterday, if you ask so many of them, the failure is from their parents. They leave them to go to the street and be begging. So they became street urchin, and they can be used, and politicians use them to rig election. So all I'm saying, sir, is that the problem is leadership. And you know that in all other countries, including Singapore, that were always talked about as a perfect example, it was a function of leadership. Dubai, that everybody runs to today and everybody is enjoying there, is a function of leadership. I read somewhere that even in the United Kingdom, for instance, UK, there was a time their judicial system was also bad, that it got to a level that they have to sentence the Chief Justice of the country. I don't know what name it's called, but they have to sentence the person to asylum. So there is no country that develops without consequences. So our leaders are afraid to visit consequences on past leaders because they are indirectly beneficiaries of the wrongs committed by the past leaders. So virtually every Nigerian political class is a beneficiary of the political wrongs in the Nigerian system. That is why, if you look at the system of justice we now got in electoral jurisprudence, it turns justice on its head. You are seeing what is wrong, and you are closing your eye to it on the basis that the road that wrong traveled to your court is not a good road. It should have followed another road. But you know that what the thing traveled to your court, you have seen, is bad. It is what my Lord, Honorable Justice Nikki Toby of blessed memory called caricature justice. So all that is happening is that we need a leader that is bold, that is courageous, that does not care about the consequences, that he himself or herself has not himself or herself eating the forbidden fruits and closing his mouth And I think, notwithstanding whatever perception you may have had, I think the Honorable the Chief Justice of Nigeria has that. For me, nobody is perfect, but I think His Lordship has up to 80% capacity to stand her foot in the NJC, in the Legal Practitioner Disciplinary Committee. The body of benchers must come together. The body of Senior Advocate of Nigeria must not play politics with the purity of justice. We must come together. The Nigerian Bar Association, the leadership, must not come together. We cannot allow Nigeria to collapse on our head. If Nigeria collapses today, the entire world will be in trouble. And I think that the international community must also sit our leaders down. Because when we travel, I was in Atlanta in 2017, and I never knew of anything called power failure. You are there. So the roads are neat. Everywhere is okay. What is wrong with our own, that from Abuja to Kaduna, the road is a death trap? Will any bandits stand on the doorway in Atlanta to say, want to stop your vehicle? They are stopping our vehicles on the road because they stand in the place the road is bad. And then you stop there, they carry you in the vehicle like a chattel. So my thinking is that both you and I and all Nigerians, both home and abroad, must come to one irresistible conclusion, that all is not well with our society called Nigeria. It's our country. Look, there's nowhere like home. Even when you are there, you are hungry to be home. Because is it Ijebode you go? Is it Apata in my village you go? Or is it Isikwato you go? If you plant yam there, it will grow. So why are we not coming together as Nigerians and forget about this either Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, or what have you? Because I'm even upset with Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo, because they are discriminating against my own tribe too. And the Constitution says no one should be discriminated on the basis of tribe.
I'm going to ask you about that. So I don't want you to jump the gun on that. We're going to talk about the middle belt. So, but before, let's get to the nitty-gritty of today's discussion. In the case of the judgment stopping the CBN from releasing the allocation to Rivers State, I know the case is in court. We don't want to preempt the court and all that. If we preach that people should be law-abiding, we should also be law-abiding. But, sir, respectfully, what does the Constitution say? For example, does the court have power to stop government or a state from getting its allocation? There's so many conflicts here and there, but what does the law really say? Planet Center.
Now there is section 162 of the Nigerian Constitution is very clear about allocation. Section 162, subsection 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each state of the federation is constitutionally the state, local government, the judiciary, the executive, the legislature, by our constitution, are entitled to the funds in the federation account that should be distributed in accordance with the procedure as prescribed by the Act of National Assembly. And as of today, the National Assembly has prescribed how money are to be distributed. You see, the matter is in court, but there is a general principle of law that I know, that when there is a constitutional duty cast on anybody, either executive, the legislature, or the judiciary, no court of law has jurisdiction to stop the performance of that statutory duty. The only time the jurisdiction of the court will be invoked is when there is a wrong performance of that duty. And the duty will be on you that have come to court to show how that duty was wrongly performed. Now, allocation had not been given, and you are saying it should not be given. I don't know the conclusion to be drawn, but in my humble view, that is to stop the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Committee, FAC, to perform a duty put upon them by Constitution and by law. So for me, I'm waiting to see how the Court of Appeal will decide at the Supreme Court. Because, you see, when you will lay foundation, I had consistently said something, and I keep drawing you back to this electoral jurisprudence. When we started creating rules for political rascality via the decisions of our courts, I warned that if we are not careful, we will not have democracy. And I can tell you, like I said in one of my paper presentation, if we don't retrace our step, the best ballot paper, the best way of winning election in 2027 and beyond is the acquisition of AK-47. Are we going to survive this country being set on a dangerous path that we cannot stop the wife from cooking food for the husband, even when they are in the matrimonial honeymoon? Can we continue to stop the judiciary from sitting when criminals are supposed to be brought to it? Because if we don't like a customary Court of Appeal, for instance, we can now go to court and say, stop the president from sitting. It's as simple as that. So your conclusions should be drawn from what I have said. I cannot say, good. So my view, therefore, is that if we go back to what we call precedents and principles of law, I do not think that we should jettison our principles of law, our constitution, for any thing that will not give us peace. For instance, I just got a judgment from the Court of Appeal on behalf of EFCC. The former governor of Kogi State went to court to stop EFCC from prosecuting him, and under what he called fundamental rights. I said it can be done, but his lordship at the trial court didn't see his way well. He said it could be done. But the Court of Appeal came down heavily and said you cannot stop an executive arm or a statutory body from performing a statutory function. The same thing when Attorney General of Anambra State and Uba is there. You can't stop a police from arresting a person. It is only when they have done a wrong arrest that you can say the arrest is wrong. So in other words, there is what we call maturity of course of action. A course of action that has not matured or that has not yet crystallized into a justiciable dispute cannot be entertained by any court. But you know, we learn every day, and since there is no an end to, you know, maybe because of the manner in which I came to become a member of the legal profession, I didn't do primary school, I didn't do secondary school. Maybe I didn't study this aspect of jurisprudence. So please pardon me, maybe it is my wrong knowledge of the law. But the little that I know says that you can't stop a statutory body from performing its function. It is when the statutory body has wrongly performed its function that you can. And let me say this, Nigeria is a federation. And being a federation, there are disputes that are within the compartment and jurisdiction of state high courts. They are not justiciable at the federal high court. The jurisdiction of the federal high court is constitutionalized, and it is there in section 251 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I've been struggling with the aid of my glasses to find where we can, but maybe it is there and I have not come across it. So this is the only way, but as far as I'm concerned, that issue must be handled properly. It must not be trivialized. It must not be a political weapon, because if we use this judicial process as a political weapon, it will set precedents in the manner that precedent was set when we got rid of card reader that would have introduced sanity to our electoral process. We cannot, my plea and my prayer to all of us is that whatever we are going to do must be in aid of good governance in Nigeria. Anything, any decision, any practice, any political decision, anything that anybody wants to do that will produce anything other than peace and tranquility in this country must be avoided, even if it involves the interest of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu. Because the highest Mr. President can be president of Nigeria is 8 years. Nigeria will outlive each and every one of us. And in the words of General Muhammad Buhari, we have no any other country other than Nigeria. We must remain here and salvage it together. Nigeria requires salvaging from the kind of deteriorating, political, unhygienic environment. Life here is getting to what looks like a state of nature. It's so brutish, shortish, and nasty. And there is likely not to be any investment coming to a chaotic society, because where you cannot predict outcome of judicial process, and it is based on, it's based on not rule of law. It's based on who you know rather than what you know. Then the society will be in a serious problems. And I think that Nigeria needs peace for us to develop.
During the Obasanjo period, there were issues with local government money belonging to Lagos State. I think the origin of that case was when Lagos State wanted to create more local governments and what have you. And the case went to the Supreme Court. So for the privilege of those maybe that were not born then or they were too young then to know, what was the conclusion of that fiasco? I'll call it a fiasco because there was so much back and forth. And I know eventually when President Yar'Adua got back, Lagos State got all their funding. So just to help out, what your answer to my first question on Rivers State is clear already. The law is supreme, the constitution is supreme. So I think that answered that. But at that time, President Tinubu now, then Governor Tinubu, had this back and forth with President Olusegun Obasanjo. So what the conclusion of that case? Yes, tell us.
You see, I think it was my Lord Justice Kayode assured that when the rule of law is in operation, it speaks the same language in both peacetime and wartime. In 2004 or thereabout, I think Governor Ahmed Bola Tinubu created local government development areas. And President Obasanjo felt that money ought to be given to the constitutionally recognized local government in the Constitution. And thank God, we are still operating the 1999 Constitution that has 774 local government in its schedule. So President Obasanjo, therefore, without any going to court, without any pronouncement from the court, decided to withhold the allocation to Lagos State government. And the Lagos State government went to court. And the Supreme Court came down heavily that cannot be done because it amounted to self-help. And so if the judiciary says that kind of conduct was self-help, it beats my imagination why the judiciary will now legalize self-help.
I think there's a reason I asked the question and you've answered me correctly.